Good evening. I'm Bob Anderson III. I was fortunate enough to be the son of Bob Anderson Jr. I was born in 1964. My dad was president of the fair from 1960 to 1983. So I never knew a time with my father that the fair wasn't a big part of our lives and he wasn't president of the fair. In my little world, there was the ground, the sky, the bank, and the fair. First of all, I want to thank Hilda Thomason and the Georgia Mountain Fair for allowing me to speak about my memories of my dad and his love for the Georgia Mountain Fair, and for naming this building after him. Keep in mind, these stories are from the perspective of a child growing up to age 19 when he passed. This is roughly the years 1969 to 1983. I hope to provide a first-hand glimpse of some of the roots of the Georgia Mountain Fair's success. I want to say up front that I'm sure I'll forget a lot of people or a lot of great people that were instrumental in helping my dad lead the fair. He passed away 42 years ago, and so great memories still remain. To put things in perspective, there were dozens and dozens of people who volunteered for the fair each year. Some people would take their 2-week vacation just to help with the fair. The fair was 100% volunteer. They did it for the pride of our area and the fellowship of working together. Let's face it, the Georgia Mountain Fair put Hiawassee and Lake Chattooga on the map. And it continues to be a huge draw and asset to our area. The fair drew tens of thousands of people, visitors from all over the country. It was 12 days and nights each August. However, it was a 12-month planning commitment, not only booking the talent, but making the volunteers feel appreciated, managing the vendor and advertising relationships, and coordinating the whole process each year. My dad owned Anderson's department store in Hiawassee and also ran a small sawmill operation in Clay County, North Carolina. However, the Georgia Mountain Fair took up the majority of his time and he thoroughly enjoyed it. He could not have done it without the support of my mother and his wife, Eloise Anderson. She ran the Bank of Hiawassee for many decades and was fully supportive of the Georgia Mountain Fair. I also want to mention the support he had from his Georgia Mountain Fair secretary, Modine Lyons. Hiawassee became the country music capital of Georgia. The centerpiece was the Big Tent, which was located in the old Towns County High School ball fields. There were over 2,000 folding chairs which had to be put up. Volunteers each year would have a chair party and set the chairs up under the big tent, and this had to be redone each year. And after each day's performance, the chairs had to be realigned for the next day's performance. And now we enjoy this nice building with padded seats and numbered seats and HVAC. So we have really grown. As you know, August is generally the hottest month of the year. It rained a lot and got hot and steamy. I remember the smell of tons of sawdust that was being used to absorb the water and all the mud puddles and muddy patches around the fair and around the big tent. The stage under the big tent had to be rebuilt each year. I can remember J.B. Nichols and his crew constructing the stage props, and the steps leading up to the stage. Huge fans were on each side of the stage. Was the only air we had flowing. Sound and lights had to be installed and coordinated each year. And for every act, Jerry Nichols was very instrumental in making the production of each show go as anticipated. The anchor of the Georgia Mountain Fair music was the Georgia Mountain Fair staff band, led by Fiddlin' Howard Cunningham, and also featuring James Chief Childress. The crescendo of the night was Fiddlin' Howard's riveting rendition of Down Yonder. And me as a kid, I still remember looking forward to that. Many famous country and western stars performed under the big tent. I want to share a couple of stories of my earliest memories of stars coming to Hiawassee. In the early 1970s, Porter Wagner came to Hiawassee. I remember his fee was $1,500. Tell you how I remember. I can remember my dad and I going to the Bank of Hiawassee and withdrawing the money. There was a mobile home that sat adjacent to the big tent, which served as a dressing room and a business office, and it had air conditioning. I will never forget my dad allowing me to count out 15 $100 bills to Porter to pay him. That was a lot of money for a kid back in the early 70s. In 1969, Conway Twitty came. My dad had promised Conway that the fair would take care of him for dinner between the 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. show. There weren't many nice places to eat back in Hiawassee back then. My Uncle J. William Denton and Donnie Denton hosted the dinner at their residence here in Hiawassee. I think they only had 2 or 3 days advance notice. It was there that I learned that stars can have stage names. His real name was Harold Jennings. He and his band had a wonderful meal, and it was an eye-opening experience for a young child to see the real person off stage. This is a prime example of the comfortable hometown family atmosphere that was pervasive across Hiawassee, that a big country music star felt comfortable coming to the private residence of somebody they didn't know and having dinner. One more quick story. It was from this building. It was either the first or second year, which would have been 1979, 1980. My dad, I had my driver's license. My dad asked me to take this young female singer and her band to OK's Barbecue for a meal. They had rented out the back of OK's for a meal in between shows. I took the performer and a couple of her band members there and back. I remember the lady being a real friendly country girl with a noticeable southern accent. I didn't realize till a few years later how famous she would become. Her name was Reba McEntire. Back then she was a nobody, so to speak. Now she's at everybody's. The talent at the fair had to be carefully selected. The fair did not have a big budget. There was no extra charge for seeing the musical performances, just an entry fee to get into the fair in general. I can remember several trips to Nashville each year to attend the CMA Country Music Awards, CMA Awards Convention. Leading up to the CMA Awards show, talent buyers such as the Georgia Mountain Fair will get an opportunity to see up-and-coming stars before they became too expensive and too famous. They performed privately in what were called showcases, which were held in the hotel's ballrooms. The challenge was selecting, this was every year in October, the challenge was selecting and committing to an act in October for the next August. There were some really good selections there. I remember getting Ricky Skaggs and Lyle Lovett before they were really big, and the fair missed out on Alabama and Charlie Rich. So anyway, it was kind of hit or miss, because the next year, if you said, oh, I want to see them, then they were too expensive. I remember many phone calls from our rotary dial phone in Warren, North Carolina. My dad would be negotiating price and checking talent for the following year's fair, not only with country music, but bluegrass and gospel as well. Other events held under the big tent that I remember were the Cloggers Convention, which is coordinated by Gene Farmer, the Fiddlers Convention, and the Miss Georgia Mountain Fair pageant. And I see we have several of our former Georgia Mountain Fair queens in attendance tonight. I often had the chore of helping these young ladies on and off the steps of the fair big tent stage. The Georgia Mountain Fair had many other aspects besides outside the big tent. Just to mention a couple, the fair parade was every Saturday, the first Saturday of the fair, and featured many classic cars, antique cars, hot rods, floats, horses, and the exhibit hall. My favorite was Jimmy Stoynoff's exhibit. Jimmy could carve raw gemstones such as amethysts, rubies, sapphires, opals into masterpieces which became nice jewelry, such as rings, pendants, bracelets, necklaces. Jimmy and Liv Stoynoff's daughter Betsy also had a unique talent in jewelry, pictures, and keepsakes, and she continued to have a booth here in Pioneer Village for many years after her dad passed. And who could ever forget the Moonshine Still hosted by real moonshiner The King, or the Tobacco Spitting Contest, which some men and women competed in, or and I saw some pictures up here, the wildlife exhibit. And I remember one year they had a live alligator and live snakes, okay? My favorite was the Midway, or as us kids would call it, the rides. The Scrambler, the Rocco Plains, the Tilt-A-Whirl, the Ferris wheel was a fun place for teens to meet kids from other schools such as Hayesville, Murphy, Blairsville, and other surrounding areas. The promotion of the Georgia Mountain Fair was always on my dad's mind. There was no internet, no websites, no wireless communication. It was purely word of mouth, brochures, newspaper, radio, and local TV. I remember multiple trips to Columbus, Georgia for appearances on the Roselle Show, hosted by Roselle Fabiani. And I wish he could be here, but Dennis Jean Blakemore in Big Six, WCBP in Murphy, would interview my dad on a cassette player and later play it on the air of Big Six. Later, when we moved to this location, Big Six would broadcast live from the Georgia Mountain Fair. As the fair continued to grow, it became obvious that a new, much bigger site was needed to accommodate more parking, allow for more crafts and exhibits, more campgrounds, concessions, place to eat, a bigger indoor venue for performances, better seating, bigger stage, and real dressing rooms. My dad had a vision, and he trusted the insights and advice from Terry Taylor. Terry was the most instrumental in the planning, construction, and TVA permitting to get the Georgia Mountain Fair to where it resides today. This was a multi-year process that culminated in 1978. The big tent was utilized here the first year. Then the music hall that we're in today was built in 1979. For many years, there was no heating or air conditioning, it was just big fans at the doors. I can remember Jack Anderson running the concession stand and Jeff Waldrop running the trout booth. The fair continued to grow in its new location. Patrons loved it. My dad was excited for the future of the fair. Unfortunately, he died suddenly at age 63 in October of 1983. Dale Thurman ultimately succeeded my dad and continued as the fair manager from 1986 to 1995. Now, thanks to the leadership of Hilda Thomason, who unbelievably is in her 30th year as fair manager, the Georgia Mountain Fair has expanded the use of this facility and the fairgrounds in general to become a year-round entertainment juggernaut. Hilda has created a diversity of events, not just music, that utilize this wonderful property year-round, and has also diversified the genres of music and entertainment that come here. Hilda has taken the fair to new heights. I especially want to thank Hilda for branching out to Southern rock, as my all-time favorite musical act that ever performed on this stage was Leonard Skinner in 2016. Followed closely by ZZ Top, who's been here 3 times. Okay. Hilda started working at the fair for a couple of years with my dad. Her enthusiasm and energy are unmatched. She is a treasure and the primary reason why the Georgia Mountain Fair still exists today. My dad would be very proud of how the fair has survived and prospered. He and Hilda share one very important trait. The Georgia Mountain Fair is in their blood. Thank you for allowing me to share my perspectives from my childhood, and God bless the Georgia Mountain Fair. Now we have an announcement, please.